up. You good? Great? Yeah? Okay. Sit back and relax because I'm gonna give you the answer to the boredom that has you on the verge of doing this.
Oh my. Who taught you? I think that. Who taught you to do that?
I was a film student for many years, which means I saw a lot of films. A lot. Everything from film noir to Latin American cinema to Italian cinema to Deep Throat. That's right, I saw Deep Throat on the big screen. So I thought, what a better way to culture yourself than from the comfort of your own home. Here are 10 of my favorite foreign films, which trust me, I know at first you hear foreign films and you're like, but you're gonna like these. I'm gonna leave the original titles from the countries that they're from on the screen because some of them are just a little too hard to pronounce. So here we go. The first film I want to recommend is called Blue is the Warmest Color. This French film follows a teenage girl named Adele who basically explores her sexuality with this older art student named Emma after they meet in a lesbian bar. As they get to know each other, they start to form a really meaningful and emotional relationship, but contrast to Emma, who right off the bat, you know that she's really sure about who she is and what she wants in life. She's an art student, so I know it's cliche, but she's very open-minded, very edgy, you know, she has blue hair, but you don't really get that vibe from Adele. You don't feel that same confidence. She's a high school student involved in boy drama and friend drama, and you don't feel that she's 100% invested like Emma is. And sometimes you even wonder if she has feelings for her or if she's just experimenting. I'm gonna try not to give away the ending to any of these movies, but what I love about this movie is that it's so raw in the sense that it doesn't hold back in showing what it's like for a female in her teen years, exploring her sexuality and the struggles that they face figuring out who they are and what they want in life. Here's a girl who's living her life day to day, you know, I think she even has like a boyfriend in the beginning of the film, and then one day she sees this girl on the street and then they meet at a bar and then it's just like bam, everything changes. And it's not like that typical high school friend who loves to party and experiment with guys and girls, not because they think that they have feelings, but just because they want to have fun and be cool and just kind of be like above everyone else and more experienced, which is fine, but this is on a deeper level. You see happiness, tears, fighting, sex, and do they end up together? Do they not end up together? You're just gonna have to watch. The next film I want to talk about is called The Invisible Guest. If you like thriller, mystery, who's really the murderer and who's really innocent type of film, but then you get like a huge twist in the end that has you like, what? I did not see that coming, then this is the film for you. It follows Adrian, this young businessman that's being accused of his girlfriend's murder after he wakes up in a hotel room with her body and the murder weapon in the next room, just before the police come charging into the crime scene and arrest him. So this lawyer gets appointed to him and they start going through everything that happened that led up to the moment where he wakes up in the hotel room. And as they're going through the timeline, Adrian starts letting out details about himself and his personal life, like adultery, and eventually confesses that he and his girlfriend had gotten into a car accident and killed the teenage driver in the other car and got rid of the body and the car instead of reporting the accident because they obviously didn't want to get caught together. After he's confessed everything to his lawyer, she gets up and leaves, and after she leaves, he goes through the files and notepad that she brought and sees that there's nothing but blank pages and just nonsense written down. I mean, she literally has 5 words written down in her notepad. As he's trying to put 2 and 2 together, another woman shows up at his apartment and introduces herself as the lawyer that's going to be representing him. What? So who's the woman that he's just confessed everything to? What I love about this movie is that it's not those type of films where right off the bat you know what's going to happen and how it's going to end. You never know who's telling the truth, who's really lying, and who's innocent. And then there's the big twist in the end that you never see coming. Like, you really just don't expect that to happen. And I love movies that have that unexpected, like, bam. So I just really love those types of good thriller movies where the main character is just as fooled as the audience. Speaking of major plot twists, the next film that I highly recommend is 9 Queens. It follows 2 con artists, Marcos and Juan, who become business partners after meeting in a convenience store while they're both trying to con the store clerk. They become involved in a $500,000 deal where they have to con their way into getting a set of rare and priceless collector stamps of 9 queens. So as the storyline unfolds, it gets harder to figure out who's conning whom, and of course, just when you think you know what's going on and how it's gonna end, bam, plot twist. It's the kind of movie that has you hooked from the very beginning. You honestly never get bored and you're always wondering who's telling the truth and who's trying to con who. I read in an article that the film style pulls from Alfred Hitchcock's vision of a paranoid universe, which is totally true because you can clearly see Juan and Marco's lack of trust in each other throughout the film, even though they're supposed to be business partners. Also, little side note, Ricardo Darín, who plays Marcos, is one of the most versatile actors I've ever seen. He does such a great job at playing any type of character in a movie. Like, sometimes you'll watch a film and usually the actor that plays the good guy is trying to be the bad guy or vice versa, and you're just like, doesn't really work for me. But he's able to convincingly portray different types of characters, from a con artist to a professor investigating a murder to a poor struggling everyday Joe on the verge of losing everything over a parking ticket. This Netflix original, Ready to Mingle, is a Mexican rom-com, and it follows Anna, a new single woman who decides to take a class on how to find a husband after her boyfriend leaves her for someone else. It's really interesting how you see this character develop throughout the film. At first, she's this big, clingy mess trying to get her boyfriend back, and once she realizes that's not gonna happen, she starts drinking, feeling sorry for herself, and just becomes obnoxious. Her cousin is supposed to be like not as pretty as the other girls, but she's married to this man who isn't really that bad looking. So she corners her cousin and pretty much forces her to confess how she gets this man to marry her. And she tells her that she takes this course that basically helps her with that specific goal. So then she desperately takes this class because she feels like she has no other options, and what's supposed to be a guide to dating and meeting a man and basically convincing him that he wants to spend the rest of his life with her, it ends up being a guide to basically finding herself and loving herself without needing someone by her side. What I love about this film is how much it incorporates social media and the internet. We're in the prime of dating apps and Facebook and posting everything that you're doing and where you are and who you're with on the internet for everyone to see. And it's interesting how you see that online culture in the film. In one scene, the professor is giving them tips on how to approach a man once they're on a date and how to act. And one of the girls raises her hand and is like, isn't that why we have the internet, so we don't have to go out? I just thought that was funny given that they were literally in a class that's supposed to help them get a husband. And you can't really do that without physically meeting them and getting to know them first. The next movie I want to talk about is City of God. It's set in the 1970s in the poorest neighborhoods of Rio de Janeiro, and it mainly follows two boys and the paths that they each take and where it eventually leads them. You have Rocket, who grows up in the favelas and for the most part stays out of trouble. He hangs out with his friends and really gets into photography and starts to document all the drug-related activities that goes on in the neighborhood. And then you have Jose, or Lil Zay, who also grows up in the favelas, only he gets involved in the drug business and uses Rocket's photos as a way to make himself known and his reputation grow, just as he's involved in a turf war. I had to dissect the hell out of this movie in one of my film classes, so now every time that I watch it, I can't help but notice every detail, from the editing and the effects that they give and the way that the story is told and the use of so many things like flashback and stuff. It's a lot. Let me talk about it. I'm gonna get nerdy right now, so bear with me. The entirety of this film is guided through Rocket's voiceover. So he's the main character and he basically tells you who each character is and gives you a backstory of each of them. One particular thing that I really enjoyed about this film was the way it was edited. It showed a lot of warm and cold color schemes that are either saturated or contrasted, freeze frames, and fast jump cuts so that you almost get an action video game kind of vibe. That being said, I love how raw the movie is in the sense that it shows what these children go through growing up in the favelas. Like, these are actual kids and these are situations that most likely happen in real life. So even though the editing is a little exaggerated, it doesn't take away from the seriousness of the plot. The next Brazilian film I want to recommend is called Central Station. It follows a school teacher named Dora who makes a living out of writing letters for illiterate people in Rio de Janeiro and basically pockets their money without ever mailing out the letters. So one day, one of her clients is killed in a bus accident and leaves behind her 9-year-old son Joshua. So Dora takes him in, not really wanting to at first, but eventually goes on a road trip with him to help him find his long-lost father. This film pretty much revived Brazilian cinema, and that is something that I learned in my film class. During the mid-90s, there were political changes going on in Brazil. Brazilian filmmakers started redirecting their attention back to Brazil after a pretty heavy political period during the late 80s, early 90s, which resulted them in leaving the country, going international, making movies that completely flopped and tanked, and then having to go back to Brazil. They also came back with this like nostalgic feeling that made Brazil more attractive to them. So now you see these filmmakers making their movies and showing this new side of Brazil that none of us ever really saw before. And you see that in Central Station with all the beautiful landscapes that Dora and Joshua encounter during their road trip that really give you a sense of the culture in Brazil. It's paired with the storyline that brings these two opposites together in this journey where you want to ask yourself, is she going to abandon him? Are they going to get along eventually? Is he ever going to find his dad? So I definitely recommend it, and it does have a bittersweet ending. The next film I chose is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So the story is set in China, and it follows Li Mubai, this badass swordsman, and Yu Shu Lian, his close friend who he's completely in love with, and vice versa, but they can't do anything about it because she was engaged to his best friend right before he died, and they're both too loyal to act on their feelings, so they're pretty much stuck in a rut. Mubai decides to retire and has Shu Lian deliver his really cool sword called the Green Destiny all the way to their benefactor in Beijing. So while Shu Lian is at the benefactor's home in Beijing, a thief sneaks in and steals the Green Destiny. So from that point on, the hunt for Mubai's sword is on and the adventure begins. What I love about this film is that it portrays all the female characters as super tough, almost tougher than all the males. Even though there's a mixture between action and romance, there's a strong feminist core. All the female characters from Shu Lian to Jen to Jade Fox show off all their fighting skills in perfectly choreographed numbers. Like, all the fight scenes in this movie are insane, and I feel like each sequence only gets longer, and it almost starts to look like a ballet dance after a while. It's very artistic. The next film I want to talk about is called Life is Beautiful. It's an Italian comedy drama that takes place during the World War II era and follows a Jewish Italian bookshop owner named Guido as he and his wife Dora and their son Joshua are taken to a Nazi concentration camp where Guido and Joshua are separated from Dora. Before all of this happens, we see how their love story begins. Guido meets Dora when she's already engaged to someone else, and despite that, he wins her over and ends up marrying her. So throughout the film, even though horrible things are happening all around them, Guido maintains his lighthearted and hopeful humor around his son. He tells him that the concentration camp is one big game and that he has to do certain things in order to win the grand prize, which is a tank. He protects them from the reality of their situation and at the same time pulls off little stunts so that he can communicate with Dora while they're separated, like using the camp's speakers to send messages so that she knows that they're okay. There's this juxtaposition between the comedic tone that's set throughout the whole first part of the movie and the dramatic turn that it takes once they're taken away to the camp. Even so, I feel like the film does a really great job subtly placing comedic and lighthearted moments during like a serious scene. For example, when Joshua finds Guido and tells him that he hid from the group of kids because they were all being taken to the showers and he hates showers. They obviously weren't taking the kids to go take showers, but it just shows how innocent this child is and how unaware he is of the situation that he's in. If you haven't seen it yet, I won't completely give away the ending, but there's one scene in particular that I just absolutely love, and it's so bittersweet. And it's when Joshua comes out of hiding and the streets are completely empty and out of nowhere a tank arrives. And it's such a sweet moment because he obviously didn't win the tank, but in his mind, he won the game and the prize is like right there in front of him. So really sweet, emotional movie, and I totally recommend it. The next film I want to recommend is called Cinema Paradiso. It follows a young boy named Salvatore De Vita who lives in this small Sicilian village where the only real form of entertainment is the Cinema Paradiso movie theater. So Salvatore grows up around this little movie theater where the whole village gets together to just bond and watch entertainment, and the projectionist Alfredo gives him a job loading film once he's old enough and pretty much influences his deep love of films. Salvatore grows up and falls in love with the girl and takes over as the Paradiso's projectionist. And Alfredo, on the other hand, is trying to convince Salvatore to leave the nest, leave the village, and pursue his passion for filmmaking. So fast forward a little bit, and now we're in the opening scene where Salvatore is an adult. He's a successful filmmaker and he's visiting the small village where he's from. This movie is really meaningful to me. My professor played it for us on the last day of class, and he gave a speech to the students that were graduating. And he said that we were similar to Salvatore in the sense that it was time for us to leave the nest, and it was time for us to leave that part of our lives in the past, leave it behind, and move forward onto the next part, onto the real world, and just pursue what we've been preparing for so many years. And that it was scary, but that sooner or later, you're gonna have to do it or else you'll be stuck where you are for the rest of your life. So the last film I'm gonna recommend is none other than Breathless. This film took everything I thought I knew about filmmaking and just given that the director is the pioneer of the French New Wave, which is this movement during the 60s where young French filmmakers rejected all traditional conventions and made experimental films that really didn't make sense, but when you watch it so many times and dissect it and overanalyze it in your class, you start to get it and you're like, oh wow, these filmmakers were either lazy and talentless or they're just brilliant geniuses. Anyway, the movie follows Michel, this petty thug who thinks he's all Rico Suave but ends up killing a policeman who pulls him over while he's driving a car that he stole. He has a love interest, Patricia, who's a New Yorker, an aspiring writer, and the epitome of a femme fatale, which I will get into in a bit. He hides out in her apartment while he thinks of a way to get enough money for himself and Patricia to go to Italy. But in the meantime, Patricia finds out that Michel is being investigated for murder and she begins to question her loyalties. Okay, so where do I even begin? First of all, I feel like if a filmmaker in the US were to try to make a film that goes against all norms of filmmaking now, you know, continuity, big budget, standard storyline, it wouldn't be as appreciated. Maybe at an art institute or if you're a film student. Correct me if I'm wrong. That being said, this film not only took inspiration from the film noir genre of the 50s, the gangsters, the female portrayal of a femme fatale, which in a nutshell is a seductive, attractive woman that eventually brings disaster to all those around her, especially her love interests, which we eventually see in the movie. But it also inspired many big Hollywood movies that we see today. Tarantino is a huge Godard fan, and you can definitely see a lot of references in his own movies. I mean, the man named his production company after one of Godard's films. So I love how this movie and the genre that it created represents a sort of passageway between classic Hollywood and the new modern Hollywood era. There you have it, guys. Those are my top 10 recommended foreign films. If you've seen any of these films or if you're gonna watch any of these films, let me know which one is your favorite and which one you like or which one you don't like. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to stay inside, and I'll see you guys in the next video.